Welcome to our channel History of Dark Souls. Everyone knows Cleopatra seduced Julius Caesar, charmed Mark Antony, ruled Egypt as a goddess made flesh. The movies show you the beauty, the power, the romance. They don't show you the bodies. They don't show you what she did to get that throne, music, what she had to do to keep it, what happened to anyone who shared her bloodline and dared stand in her way. This isn't a story about seduction. This is a story about power and what someone is willing to erase to keep it. Power in ancient music, Egypt was never shared. It was taken, and once taken, it had to be defended from the only people close enough to steal it. In the Tmic dynasty, the greatest threat to a ruler was never a foreign army. It was the person sitting beside them on the throne, the person who shared their blood, the person who slept in the next room. Music in that world, loyalty lasted only as long as it was useful. Love was a liability, and survival often meant music, making sure you were the last one left standing. Before we step inside the palace where this story turns dark, drop a comment with your city, music, and country. Because once you see how far someone will go to keep a throne, you may never look at power or family the same way again. Deep inside the Palace of Alexandria, in a room you've never seen in any music film, a young woman watches a condemned prisoner die. She's taking notes because she's testing the poison on the dying music man in front of her. The poison reaches his blood and his body betrays him. A tremor, a gasp, foam at the mouth. Music, his knees give out. Within minutes he is still. Cleopatra doesn't look away. She watches the order of music, the timing, how fast the breath fades, whether it looks like suffering or sickness, whether anyone in the room would suspect poison at all. This is not curiosity. Music, it is preparation. She's practicing because she has a specific target in mind. Someone she music needs dead. Someone whose death has to look like natural causes. Her 15-year-old music brother, who also happens to be her husband. Yes, you heard that right. Her brother and her husband, the music, same person who also happens to be her co-ruler, the boy who sits beside her on Egypt's throne, who shares her power, who stands between her and absolute control. His name is Tommy Music, the 14th, and he has no idea his sister wife is planning his murder, but he's not her first sibling, and music, he won't be her last. To understand what Cleopatra did, you need to understand what she learned. And that lesson came when she was music, 14 years old, standing in the palace, watching her older sister die. Bones, beautiful, ambitious, capable Bones. She'd ruled Egypt for 3 years while their father was in Rome, begging for military music support, and she'd ruled it well. The people loved her. The priests supported her. Music, Egypt prospered under her hand. And then their father came back with a Roman army behind him and very specific ideas about what happened to daughters who took power that didn't belong to them. Cleopatra watches the executioner raise the music blade. She watches her sister forced to her knees. She watches Brina's head separate from her body, watches it fall. Music watches the blood pool on the palace floor. She's 14. Her sister is around 25. And their father, the man who ordered this, the man who had his own music daughter beheaded for the crime of ruling too well. He makes sure all his remaining children music witness this. Make sure they understand. This is what happens when you take power you're not supposed to have. This is what happens when you threaten someone's throne. This is what family music means in the Tami dynasty. Kill or be killed. Murder or be murdered. Survive or become a lesson music for whoever comes next. Cleopatra learns. Oh, she learns so very well. 4 years later, her father dies. Music, natural causes this time. The kind of death that just happens when you're old and paranoid, music, and have spent your whole life drowning in wine and worry. And the succession is clear, music written in his will, approved by Rome. Cleopatra and her younger brother Tommy I 13th will rule together. Co-rulers, husband, music, and wife, brother and sister. She's 18. He's 10. They're married, music, of course. That's how it works in the Tami family. Brother-sister marriage, keeping the bloodline pure, keeping the power concentrated, making sure the throne stays in the family. It's music been this way for 300 years. Generation after generation of siblings forced to marry each other, forced to share power, forced to pretend they're not constantly plotting music, each other's deaths. Because that's the other Tommy tradition, the one that doesn't get carved into monuments or painted on temple walls. The murder, the endless, music, systematic, predictable murder. Uncles killing nephews, mothers killing sons, brothers killing sisters, sisters killing brothers. Over and over and over for 3 centuries. Music, a family that stays in power by regularly killing itself. Cleopatra was raised in this. Music, she breathed it. She watched her sister's execution at 14 and understood this is normal. This is what royal families do. This music is the price of the throne. So when her 10-year-old brother husband starts listening to his advisors, when those advisors start suggesting music, that maybe Egypt doesn't need a queen, maybe a king alone would be better, maybe Cleopatra should step music aside, she knows exactly what's coming. She's seen this play before. She knows how music it ends. She leaves, flees to Syria, raises an army, comes back ready for war. And music, that's when Julius Caesar arrives. The most powerful man in Rome, chasing his enemy Pompey, who's just been murdered on Egypt's shore. Caesar expects music to find a grateful client kingdom. Instead, he finds a civil war. Cleopatra famously smuggles herself into his presence rolled in a carpet. And yes, she seduces him. And yes, she's brilliant music and beautiful and everything the legends say. But here's what the legends leave out. She doesn't just seduce Caesar music for romance. She seduces him because she needs Rome's legions to kill her brother. And it works. The Battle of the Nile. Tommy the 13th's forces against Caesar's legions and Cleopatra's ambition. The official history says Ptolemy died fleeing the battle, music drowned in the Nile River. Tragic accident. Young king lost in the chaos of war. His body was music found days later, weighted down with his golden ceremonial armor washed up on the shore. But here's the thing about golden armor. Music, it's heavy, very heavy. Heavy enough to drag a grown man to the bottom of a river. Heavy enough to music make sure a wounded, exhausted, terrified 13-year-old boy who's just watched music, his army destroyed, would have no chance of swimming to safety. Some historians whisper that the armor music was put on him after he was already dead. Others suggest he was fleeing on horseback, fell in the river, and the weight music of the gold did the rest. But there's a third possibility, one that fits the pattern, one that makes sense if you music understand who Cleopatra really was. He was wounded in the battle. Maybe badly, maybe not. He made it to the river, tried to escape. And music, Cleopatra's soldiers, the ones loyal to her, the ones who knew what she wanted, they made music sure he drowned. They held him under, maybe, or they shot him from the shore. Or they simply watched as the golden armor dragged him down music and did nothing. As the boy who'd been king gurgled and sank and died, Tommy I 13th went music, into that river alive and came out dead. Cleopatra's most immediate threat eliminated. Her brother, her music husband, her co-ruler gone. She was 21 years old, she just won her first civil war. She just orchestrated her first sibling's music death. One down, but Egypt needs a pharaoh, and tradition demands it be a pair. Male and female, music, brother and sister, husband and wife. So Cleopatra does what's expected. She marries her remaining younger brother, Tommy I 14th. Music, he's 11 years old. She makes him her co-ruler, puts him on the throne beside her, presents him to Egypt as her husband and her partner, and then music, she ignores him completely because she is Caesar now. She has Rome's support, Rome's legions, music, Rome's protection. She has power without needing to share it with some child husband whose only qualification for the throne is that he shares her DNA. Tommy the 14th sits on his throne, wears his crown, appears in ceremonies, but everyone knows who really rules. Music, everyone understands this is Cleopatra's Egypt now. For 4 years it works. Caesar visits, fathers her son, Caesarion, goes back to Rome and gets himself assassinated by senators who fear he's becoming a king. And music, Cleopatra waits in Egypt with 2 sons now. Caesarion, Caesar's child, and Tommy I 14th, her brother music husband, who's starting to grow up, starting to have his own opinions, starting to maybe wonder why his sister wife treats him like a ceremonial prop instead of a real king. And that's when he becomes inconvenient because Cleopatra has a plan. Music, Caesar's dead, but his heir is coming. Young Octavian, who will eventually call himself Augustus and rule Rome for decades. And she needs music, Egypt secure, needs her power absolute, needs no complications, no rival claimants, music, no teenage brother husband who might get ideas about actually ruling. She needs Tommy the 14th gone. Music, so she goes back to that room, the one where prisoners die. She goes back to her notes, her careful music, documentation of symptoms and timing and detection. She's had years to think about this, years to music plan. She knows which poison she wants now, knows how to administer it, knows how to make it look like illness. Music, natural causes, tragic but unavoidable. Picture her watching another prisoner convulse. Another test subject confirming music, what she already knows. This one, yes, this poison leaves no obvious trace. This poison mimics the music symptoms of common illness. This poison will work. Tommy the 14th is 15 years music, old when he dies. The official cause is listed as disease, sudden illness, the kind of thing that just happens sometimes in Alexandria's heat and disease and crowded streets. He's co-ruler 1 week, dead the music next, mourned publicly and replaced immediately. Replaced by Caesarion, music, Cleopatra's 3-year-old son, her new co-ruler, a toddler who music can't read, can't write, can't rule, can't threaten her in any possible way. From teenage husband to toddler co-ruler, from potential rival to literal infant, the message is clear. Cleopatra doesn't share power. Music, she just pretends to. And when the pretense becomes inconvenient, the co-ruler dies. That's 2 brothers music dead, 2 brother husbands eliminated. 2 threats removed, but there's still a sister. And Cleopatra has a very, very long memory. Her name is Arsinoe, younger music's sister. The one who sided with Tommy I 13th during the Civil War, the one who declared herself queen while Cleopatra was seducing Caesar. Music, she lost, Caesar won, Cleopatra won, and Arsinoe paid the price. She walked in Caesar's triumph. 17 years old, beautiful, terrified, dragged through Rome streets in chains, music, while crowds screamed insults and threw things and described what they wanted to do to her. She heard the screams of other captured queens that day. The ones who weren't famous enough to protect, the ones who got exactly what Roman soldiers wanted after victory. If you want to understand what Roman victory really meant for defeated queens, music, we made a full video on it, and it is far worse than most people imagine. You can watch it from the card in the top music, right, or the link in the description. She heard and she understood how lucky she was. Music, how being Cleopatra's sister and Caesar's captive saved her from worse. But Caesar showed mercy, or music, what passed for mercy in Roman terms. Instead of execution, exile; instead of death, permanent removal. He sent her to Ephesus to the temple of Aramis, music, to live as a priestess, celibate and powerless and far from Egypt. And for years, music, it works. Arsinoe lives in that temple, performs her duties, keeps her vows. She never speaks of Egypt, never claims the throne, never causes problems. Music, she survives by being invisible, by making everyone forget she exists. Music, but Cleopatra doesn't forget. Years pass. Caesar dies. Music, Cleopatra takes Mark Antony as her lover, her partner, her weapon against Rome. She has power now. Real power. The kind that music doesn't need to worry about one exiled sister living quietly in a temple thousands of miles away. Except she does worry because Arsinoe is still music, alive. Still a Ptolemy. Still a potential rival, a potential symbol for anyone who wants to challenge Cleopatra's rule. And Cleopatra has learned her lesson well. You don't leave threats alive. You don't wait for them to become problems. You eliminate them when you music can. How you can, completely and permanently. So she asks Mark Antony for a favor, just one small favor. There's this woman, music, you see, this exile, this former queen who dared challenge Rome. She's living in a temple. Music, protected by sanctuary. Yes, protected by sacred law, certainly. But surely for Cleopatra, for Egypt's music queen, for the woman Antony loves, surely he can arrange something. And he does. The assassins come music during a festival, during a ceremony. When the temple is full of worshippers and the rituals are at their most sacred. They don't care. They're not there for piety. Music, they're there for Arsinoe. They find her at the altar, grab her, drag her down the temple steps while priests' music scream and worshippers scatter. And the sacred space is violated in the worst way possible. And they kill her there on those steps music in front of everyone. Not because Arsinoe had done anything. Not because she'd plotted or schemed or threatened. Music she'd been living quietly for years, causing no trouble. Forgotten by everyone except the music, one person who mattered. Cleopatra killed her sister not for what she was doing but for what she represented. Killed her not in rage music but in cold calculation. Waited years. Let Arsinoe think she was safe. Let her build a life in exile. And then struck precisely when music it was convenient. That's the darkest part. Not the murder itself, but the patience, the calculation, the cold understanding that you can let a threat survive for years and years as long as you know you'll eliminate it when the time is right. 3 siblings music, dead, the pattern complete. But why? Why this systematic elimination? Why this patient, calculated, thorough destruction of her own family because music she was a Tammy? And for 300 years, this is what Tammys did. The dynasty started music, with Tammy I, one of Alexander the Great's generals who took Egypt after Alexander music, died and founded a kingdom that would last 3 centuries. And from the very beginning, from that first music, Tammy to Cleopatra at the end, the family had 2 unbreakable traditions. First, brother marriage music. Keep the bloodline pure, keep the power concentrated, keep the throne in the family by making sure the family only ever married itself. Generation after generation of siblings forced into marriage, music forced into producing heirs, forced into pretending this was normal and natural and the will of the gods. Second, murder. Constant, predictable, systematic murder. Because here's what happens when you force siblings to share power. They kill each other for it. Tammy IVTH had his mother assassinated. Ptolemy Music, VI killed his nephew, then married his nephew's widow, who was also his sister. Tommy X the 11th murdered his stepmother who'd made him co-ruler on and on and on. 30 pharaohs over 300 years and nearly music, every succession involved murder. Nearly every generation saw siblings killing music. Siblings, parents killing children, children killing parents. It wasn't aberration. Music it was tradition. It wasn't shocking. It was expected. Children in the Tammy family were raised knowing they would either kill their siblings or be killed by them. That music was just how it worked. That was the price of being royal. Cleopatra didn't invent this system. She just perfected it. Music she was more successful at sibling murder than any Tommy before her. More thorough, music more patient, more complete. By the time she was done, every sibling was dead. Every potential rival eliminated, every threat removed. She started at 18 with a civil war and finished music in her 30s with a temple assassination. And in between, she killed with poison and proxy and perfect cold calculation. And the whole time she presented herself as Isis, goddess incarnate, the loving mother, the divine queen, the music savior of Egypt. She built temples. She performed sacred rites. She dressed in Isis's music, robes and crown, and declared herself the goddess's living representative on earth while murdering her family systematically. That's the music, cognitive dissonance that breaks your brain. Loving mother goddess who poisons her teenage brother husband. Divine queen who has her sister assassinated at a temple altar. Egypt's savior who eliminates anyone who shares her blood. And it worked. For decades, it worked. She music ruled Egypt longer and more successfully than almost any Ptolemy before her. She kept the kingdom independent when Rome was swallowing everything music else. She played Julius Caesar and Mark Antony, seduced them both, used them both, music, almost pulled off the impossible trick of making Egypt Rome's equal instead of its subject. All of it built on a foundation of murdered siblings. The Romans knew. They documented it. They used it against her in their propaganda after she died. Painted her as a monster who killed her own family, a barbarian who violated every natural law. But here's the funny thing. Romans accepted murder. They understood political assassination. Music they just stabbed Julius Caesar to death in the Senate House surrounded by senators. They had no moral high ground here. What disturbed them wasn't that Cleopatra music killed. It was how she killed. The patience, the planning, the cold, systematic elimination. The way she could smile at her brother husband while plotting music his murder. The way she could wait years to kill her sister, let her think she was safe, then strike without warning or mercy. That scared them, that level of calculation, that depth of cold-blooded patience. Because here's what you need to understand. Cleopatra wasn't passionate. She wasn't hot-blooded or impulsive or driven by rage. She was the opposite. She was ice. She was mathematics. Music. She was 300-year-old family tradition perfected into an art form. When Brennai's music was beheaded, 14-year-old Cleopatra didn't cry. She watched. She learned. She understood. Music. When Ptolemy XIII drowned, weighted down in golden armor. 21-year-old Cleopatra didn't mourn. She consolidated power. She moved on. When Ptolemy XIV music died of convenient poison, 25-year-old Cleopatra replaced him with her toddler's son and kept ruling. Music. When Arsinoe was murdered on temple steps, 30-something Cleopatra music was already planning her next move with Rome, already thinking about Antony and Octavian music, and the coming civil war that would determine whether Egypt survived as a kingdom or music became just another Roman province. The siblings were just obstacles.